Good morning, family. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right, good. Well, we're glad, honored to be here today. I want to thank Vic for, where are you, Vic?
He's counting money.
He's counting. Okay. Thanks, Vic, for picking us up. Thanks, Stan, for wonderful lunch yesterday. I want to thank Lori for her hospitality. We're staying at her house and enjoying it very much. And just thank Chris and everybody for the warm welcome last night. We went to Blaze Pizza. It was really, really good. So we just want to I could really feel the love in this congregation. My wife and I both, just the friendliness, and we're just really touched by your all's kindness. And so we're honored to be here. So whenever you're ready, there's our mighty pup, Mayu. She is Japanese Spitz, and the name Mayu in Japanese means gentle. She's anything but gentle. But we're honored to be here today, and I guess I need my clip. All right. There's my beautiful wife, my bride, my wife Teresa, my beautiful daughter Sarah, 16-year-old daughter Sarah. We're just thrilled to be here today. So today we're going to look at a kind of a different. I understand you all support Joe Shulam. Joe is a good friend of ours. He stayed at our house in Brazil, and I was actually baptized at the church where he, North Boulevard in Murfreesboro, that supports him, has supported him since 1970. So Joe would be real proud of me today because I'm going to be doing a Jewish perspective of a very familiar story. So please don't say, yeah, I've heard that story, yeah. No, you haven't. I promise you today, once you've heard this from a Jewish perspective, it changes the entire parable, as often it happens. So when you hear the word Father, what is the immediate image that comes to your mind? Is it a positive image? I hope it is. And praise God, if you did have an earthly dad that was really kind and good, and he loved you and appreciated you for who you were, praise God for that. But for a lot of us, we had maybe a negative image of our dads. And this is not putting our dads down today, but this is just being frankly honest. Your earthly dad influences your view of God the Father. Did you realize that? So how you see God, your first impression of God as a child, usually comes from your earthly dad. So I think for most of us, we spend most of our lives, if we have had a negative experience with our dads, that we spend our whole lives trying to get his acceptance. In fact, I know many men who their fathers were just so harsh with them and they felt like they could never measure up to their dad's approval that they worked very hard, 70, 80 hours a week. They spent most of their lives trying to earn their father's love. And even when they're dead and gone, they're still doing it. So, as I said, it really affects how you see God. Bill Bright is so correct. Everything about our lives, our attitudes, motives, desires, actions, and even our words is determined and influenced by our view of God. We can trace most of our human problems and fears to a wrong view of God. So, where I like to camp, where I like to talk about more than anything, is who God is. Because if you don't have a correct understanding of God, it's going to influence your entire walk with God. In other words, if you have a bad view of the Lord, you're obviously not going to want to spend time with Him. You're not going to want to talk to Him because you don't see Him as a glad God. You see Him as a mad God or a sad God. A God who's not pleased with you and not looking at you and looking at you with joy in His heart. So what are some wrong views that people have of God that have been influenced by their earthly fathers? So one of the views, I'll give you 5 of them here. If our father was passive, in other words, if he didn't give you any hugs, if he didn't say, I love you, then you're going to see God as someone who really doesn't care about your life. If your father was strict, if he's just like, okay, just obey the rules, just keep your nose clean, you're going to see God as someone who just wants your service, who doesn't want a deepening relationship with you. If your father was abusive, and I'm here today to tell you that, and I'm sorry, if this brings up any memories from your past, I'm not trying to do that. If you have been physically or emotionally abused, but that does affect how you see God. You see Him as harsh and demanding, someone who you cannot trust. And by the way, I have met lots of people who have been sexually abused, and when they bring it to God, God brings healing to their life. So healing is possible for those of us who have been sexually abused. Another view that people have of God is that their father was absent, like my dad. My biological father, my mother was married for 2 years, and then they divorced, and then she got married to another guy, and they were married for 2 years, and they divorced. So I went through 2 divorces by the time I was 5. So I was just beginning to think, man, these dads just don't like me. They don't want to be around me. So this is a view of God that I have struggled with in my own life. Struggling with the idea of when I fail, He's going to somehow leave me. And I've just come to the point in my walk with God after 29 years that I know God's not going to leave me or forsake me. And I really believe it now. You know, you can say stuff with your head, but your heart doesn't agree with you. You know what I'm saying? So I think for a lot of us, we got to get from here to here. So another one was an accusing person. And this is very common in Korea. If he is always critical, you did this wrong, you can't do this right, you're going to see God as someone who you can't please. You can never do enough for Him. So we need to let Jesus tell us what His Father's like. We need to let Him tell us, and we need to allow the Holy Spirit to change our thinking. And you can do that. God can change your thinking. I appreciated what Michael shared during communion. By the way, you're blessed to have Michael. He is a godly man. Amen. When a man cries in public and he's talking about the Lord, you know that man is very sincere. And I enjoyed talking with him last night. But that was what he was sharing during communion about how we see God. And beautiful story, by the way, of that abortion clinic and how God used that guy to help that lady. Amazing story. But we have to allow God to change our thinking, and we have to understand that most of us have faulty understandings of God. So, when it comes to reading the Bible, we're reading the Bible we need to read it from an Eastern perspective. You know, most of us come from a Western culture, most of us here, some do not. But we need to understand that the parables and all the things that Jesus said were written from an Eastern perspective. They have a different way of thinking. Okay? And the problem for most of us is we read the Bible with Gentile eyes. We don't read them with Jewish eyes. And therefore, when you read the parables, what's going to happen to you is you're going to miss things. They're going to go straight over your head. You're going to go, oh, I didn't realize that's what it meant. And so, when I got married 17 years ago, my wife was already involved in understanding the Bible from a Jewish perspective, and she really helped me start to understand that's not what the text says, Chris. And she was helping me understand that there's much more to it. And the studying these last several years, there is so much to read. And I want to encourage you. If you're interested in any books, by the way, there's some really good stuff out. I can share with you if you're interested. So let me give you an example. In Eastern culture, it's all about honor and shame. Okay? Honor is a person's worth in society. Shame is the rejection they feel from their community. Okay? Our culture is more of a guilt, more independent type of culture as opposed to the Eastern culture. So in the West, we're individuals. In the East, it's all about the community. It's about the group. It's about the family. In the West, it's about rules. It's about following laws. In the East, it's more about the expectations of the group. So if you went to an Asian and say, hey man, you've broken God's law and Jesus died on the cross and He'll forgive you of your guilt, they're going to look at you and go, I haven't done anything wrong. What are you talking about? So you have to talk to an Asian in a different way than you talk to a Westerner when you talk about the cross. You bring a different perspective. You dishonor God with your sin. You dishonor God because you have gone your way instead of His way. And God can restore your honor and remove your shame when you turn back to Him. See, it's a whole different message that you would bring in an Eastern culture. In West, it's about guilt. In the East, it's about shame. In the West, it's about, I made a mistake. In the East is, I am a mistake. You see the difference? In the West, it's about punishment and justice. In the East, it's about excluding and removing the person that has done the sin. So when you read parables, this will start opening your eyes. In the West, it's about forgiveness. In the East, it's about restoring someone to community. Big, big difference. Okay, so now, in Luke 15, who are the two small groups that we're talking about? Well, we're talking about the Pharisees, and we're talking about the sinners. Okay? And it's all done within a community context. Okay? You have to read this from community context. It's not done individually. It's not done, Jesus talking to one guy and one guy only. No, this is a whole group. All right? And so, I love how the beginning of this text begins. And the Pharisees said, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Aren't you glad about that? Oh, I'm so glad about that. But I picture Jesus as smiling and enjoying a feast with people who were the rejects of the culture. The rejects. The unwanted. The unforgiven. Luke 15, what kind of father does Jesus tell his father is? Well, he's a God who cares. The one that would leave the 99 and go after the one. A glad God. A glad God who rejoices when his children come back to him. So you have to begin to see God in a different light, in a different context than the context that you may think he is. All right? He's a God who values, a father who diligently looks for his child who is lost. Every person in this room has value, has worth, because you are created in the very image of God. Each one of us are special to God. He values you. You're worth something. The reason the cross transformed my life is because I suddenly realized how much I was worth to God. If Jesus Christ would go through that for each one of us in this room, and you suddenly realize, I'm not a reject, I'm not somebody who's worthless in culture, I am somebody who's valued by God. It changes your life. It changes your whole perspective. So, Jesus told him a story. A man had two sons. Don't tune me out, because I know you're starting to tune me out already. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. What he's saying is this: Father, you're as good as dead to me. I don't care. In other words, it would be your son or your daughter coming to you and saying, I don't love you or care about you. I just give me my money out of the will and I'll be on my way. Can you imagine your child saying that to you? How hurt you would be? Well, that's exactly what this younger son is telling his father. You're as good as dead to me. Give me my inheritance. Wow. Younger son dishonors his father. Now remember, this is in public. This is community. We're talking villages. All right? But the father does not disown him as expected. You would expect the father to disown his son publicly. That's what they would normally do in Jewish culture. You're no longer my son, get out. All right? That's expected, but he doesn't do it. And there's no ATM. It's not like he can go to the Jerusalem ATM and get some money out. The money was tied up in land, and this would take time to sell. And you can imagine the community gossiping about, hey, did you hear what this younger son did to his father? Can you imagine that? I can't believe that guy didn't disown him. Can you imagine? See, the money was supposed to be used for the retirement. That's what he was supposed to use it for. It was not meant for the son to take away from him. It was meant to support his dad when he got old. Where's the older son to defend the honor? Where is he? He's not there. This is interesting if you understand this parable. So he continues. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his field to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the food he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. So imagine how the village feels about this guy. You know, the younger son has been dishonored his dad publicly. You can imagine how this village felt toward this younger son. They rejected him. Can you imagine the betrayal, you know? Where did he go? Well, hey, did you hear he went to the Gentiles and he's working with pigs, man? It serves him right. And I heard he's even eating what the pigs eat. This is detestable to a Jew. And Jesus, what he does is he takes the most detestable thing that is to a Jewish person's eyes, and he says, guess what? This kid is doing it. He's doing it. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home even the hired servants have enough food to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Please take me as a hired servant. There is a Jewish custom in the first century called kazazah. This is a thing where they banish anyone who sells or loses their inheritance to the Gentiles. You see, this is what Jesus does. He takes the most detestable thing known to a Jew in the first century. This is it, kazazah. And what they would do, what this village did after this son left, is they broke public and say, you are no longer welcome in our village. So the son remembers this, you know. What am I going to do? You know? Maybe he can pay back the inheritance. The son says this, but, you know, what is he expecting his father to do? He's expecting his father to reject him. He's expecting his father to disown him publicly. But he figures it's worth a try. I've got nothing to lose but my honor. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, kissed him. He saw him. Was the father going out every day to look for his son? Maybe he was looking in the distance and saying, I hope he's coming today. I hope he's coming. And then he does something that is totally radical. He ran. Old men don't run. Old men, I guess, can't run. Some guys. But old men are not supposed to run in Jewish culture. It's disrespectful. They wait for you to come to them. Because it's an honor-shame culture. You do not dishonor yourself publicly as a father. And so the village is watching this, going, what on earth is going on? This guy is risking social dishonor? They were shocked, absolutely shocked that this guy did this. And his son says to him, probably with a little bit of unbelief, can you see the shock in his face? I've sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy. He gets the speech out, you know. But his father says to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house. Put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. Kill the calf. We haven't been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but is now found. So the glad God began to have a party. This glad God that we serve. See, our view of God sometimes is, okay, you can come back. I guess I'll let you come back. This is a God who absolutely adores you. When you turn back to him, he smiles. The robe, the ring, the shoes, the feast, this is all about honor and acceptance in Eastern culture. If you want to have forgiveness in Eastern culture, you have a feast. This is why a couple times I offended a brother of mine, and what we did, instead of talking about it, we went to go get something to eat. And it wasn't talked about, but it was understood that you're forgiven. Even though I said, I'm sorry, he never said, I forgive you. But he said, let's go out to eat. And that's what that means. So Jesus says, when you think about God the Father, this is the image I want you to have in your head. A God who opens his arms wide, who says, you are welcome home. You are welcome home. I love you. I accept you. That is the image Jesus is trying to help us understand. Because we need images, right? We need images to help us understand how God is. So Jesus says, this is what I first want you to understand. My Father is a Father. What exactly? He pursues you. He never gives up on you. And I don't know where you are today in your walk with God. Maybe you just stumbled in here today, or I don't know where anybody here is in their walk with God. But I can tell you this. God is pursuing you. And he wants your heart. Because he loves you. The prodigal son represents all of us, right? These next pictures I'm really not proud to show. They're me. Yeah. I was raised in a non-Christian home. My grandparents raised me. Good people who just didn't know God. My grandmother had a lot of pain in her life, so she was an alcoholic. I grew up in D.C., Washington, D.C., and I was obsessed with music from the time I was 6 years old. And I wanted to be a rock star. Unfortunately, with that comes a lot of rebellion. My mother finally remarried by the time I was 8 to a good man. He adopted me and changed my last name. My last name was Allen, Christopher Moreau Allen, until I was 11. And God gave me another picture of what adoption means. This being adopted. Changed my last name to Boise. Not Boise. Boise. I often wondered, was there a guy named Boyce that came here and somebody misspelled his name or something? Anyway, I started doing drugs when I was 13. I was a pretty empty individual. Smoking weed, hanging around the wrong people, drinking, partying. I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't a drug addict, but I was hurt on the inside. And I tried to medicate my pain, like most people do. They don't have God in their life. And I graduated at the end of my class. I was high through most of high school. I don't have a lot of memories of it. I do remember graduating 310 out of 330. The D- average. I got thinking, wow, there's 20 guys worse than me. So I got into a heavy metal band. I got in a Metallica type group. I had so much anger inside of me as a child. And Slayer and Megadeth and Anthrax, all these nice sounding bands, fed this anger. And you wonder why your children listen to some of the music they listen to, they're angry. Okay? It feeds it. And so I began to get in, this band. Things got really crazy, and I realized I needed to get my life together, so I found myself joining the Air Force when I was 20. I was in the Air Force for 3.5 years. I was a roadie for the Air Force band. Very unusual job. I've eaten in every McDonald's and Burger King known to mankind. But I did audio, and I still didn't have God in my life, nor did I want God in my life. I viewed God as somebody who would take away my fun. A God who would reject me and would not, I thought I'd just gone too far. So when I got out of the Air Force, after making a lot of bad choices in the military, I moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And was going to go to Middle Tennessee State University and be a recording engineer. And I began to rent an apartment from a 70-year-old Christian widow whose name is Grace. You see where this is going, right? And this lady began to reach out to me. The last time I ever did drugs, I was at a concert and somebody passed what I thought was pot to me, but it was crack cocaine. And that was pretty strong stuff. It scared the daylights out of me. My grandmother died and raised me during this time, and I began to wonder about this Jesus guy. And Grace began to reach out to me, just began to wash my clothes every day and give me food. And, people make evangelism so difficult when in reality it's just loving people, you know what I'm saying? That's really all you got to do, is to not judge people, but to love them. You didn't have to tell me I was going to hell. I already knew that. But I needed to know that there was some hope. And so, one morning in June of 1990, she invited me to her church, North Boulevard Church of Christ. And I said, "What's the Church of Christ? Is that the Mormons or something?" Church of Jesus Christ. I didn't know. She said, "No, we're just trying to be New Testament Christians." And I said, "That's interesting." But I heard the gospel for the first time and really began. I knew about Jesus and I believed in God, but I didn't know anything about the Bible. And the whole summer of 1990 began my search for God. And I knew things were beginning to change because I was at the beach with a bunch of my friends from high school, and they were going to smoke weed and party all week. And I had a friend that could drink probably a case of beer and still function. But I stood up and I said, "Guys, I can't live like this anymore." And I'm beginning to find God in my life. And my one friend said to me, "Man, Boise, next thing you know, you're going to become a minister." A couple years later, he said, "I didn't mean it." But anyway, I came back from there and I walked into the minister's office at North Boulevard Church of Christ. Jim Chilton, bless his heart. This is a picture of Grace and Jim. Walked into Jim's office. That guy could preach like he ate breakfast with Jesus. And I knew he had something I didn't have. And I said, "What do I got to do to become a follower of Jesus?" We sat down, had a Bible study, was baptized August 8th, 1990. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I understand that phrase where the things came off Paul's eyes. It was like I could see for the first time in 24 years. I had done drugs for 10 years. Drank, partied. But I'm like, this is what I've been searching for the whole time. I've been looking for God. And for young people today, I want you to understand you're in the right place today. You guys are in the right place. Because there ain't nothing out in the world that's going to give you peace and joy like Jesus Christ. Amen? So anyway, I began to get into ministry. Some guy in the church took me down to the prison and said, "Hey, get involved in prison ministry." And that's where it all started a couple months later. And so God opened the door for me to go to Lipscomb, paid my entire way. And I've now been drug-free and alcohol-free now for 29 years, by the grace of God. Got involved with inner-city ministry, worked in the ghetto in Mobile, Alabama. I was the only white guy for 30 miles. We started inner-city ministry there, and it was like, when you talk to the inner-city, you've got to have a little attitude, walk a particular way. You got to talk a particular way. You become all things to all men so that some may be one to Christ. So I put on my football jersey and my shorts down here. And this is where I met my wife. She worked in Nashville Inner City Ministry. We met at a camp in 1996. Took our teenagers to camp. But I got stories galore about what God did in the inner city there in Mobile. We don't have time. I felt God's call for Africa, moved to Texas, and actually, do you guys know Calvin Gruden? Yeah. Calvin was our neighbor in Tanzania. I went to school with Calvin at ACU. We went to West Africa together. And I initially went to Tanzania, but then had to come back because of back trouble. But we moved there, and my wife and I got married in Tanzania. Probably the only white couple to have ever gotten married in Mwanza, Tanzania. But it was a beautiful day. We had a beautiful day at the county commissioner's office. She was very nice, very beautiful. And we had a spiritual ceremony. Calvin and my other teammate, Eric Kyle, married us on their porch there. And what's kind of neat about our family is I was baptized August 8, 1990. My wife and I were married August 8, 2002, and Sarah was born August 8, 2003, and I lived in Kenya. And August 8th is a day of luck in China. Those people get married on August 8th in China. So we lived in the city of Mwanza, and Mwanza has about 1 million people, and basically the village has come to the town, basically. God did some amazing things there. The 3 churches were planted, 3 evangelists were trained, and I still keep in touch with Lazaro, Emmanuel, and Petrai. I just talked to Lazaro last week. We don't text, we don't talk on the phone, but we text. We talk to Emmanuel quite frequently. And that's Lazaro preaching, the first guy who was to be baptized. So proud of him. He's still they're all still involved in ministry, all still doing some great things. And this is my beautiful daughter. We had to leave Tanzania because my wife got really, really sick. And so she had been a missionary in Brazil. So we thought, let's move to Brazil. So we moved there in 2007, and we worked primarily with leadership training and discipleship training with some wonderful churches. And Brazil's a blast, guys. Brazilians want to party. They want to turn everything into a party. Even a Bible study. You'd be there at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they're saying, hey, don't go, stay, and have another cup of coffee. And I'm not going to have any more coffee. I won't be able to sleep for a week. But Brazilians are lovely people. Lovely, lovely people. We miss them, and the Tanzanians immensely. After that, we worked with a church in Manchester, Tennessee, Forest Mill Church of Christ, a wonderful congregation. And then God called us to Korea. And we went to Korea. That is a traditional home. See how it's painted, how beautiful the structure is. It's just been amazing. We were there for 3.5 years. This is our view outside of our apartment in Hangdong. Seoul is a city of 22 million. We came back in September, about a month ago. And so we worked primarily with a small church a friend of mine had worked with and taught Bible in, and we also worked in a student ministry. God has such a sense of humor because he took someone who has no idea what a pronoun is, and he said, okay, you're going to be a professor of English in this university. And I kept telling him, I don't know grammar. My wife knows grammar. Hire my wife. And but you got a master's degree, and apparently I needed a master's degree. And I thought a pronoun was somebody that was 4 nouns. But anyway, God gave us a wonderful opportunity to plant seeds in a lot of kids who are just hurting, like the prodigal son, just really hurting and have very angry at their fathers. A lot of atheists, and so we had good chances to plant seeds there. And so, man, if Jesus Christ can change my life, what excuse do you have? There is nothing, no sin God cannot forgive and wash clean this day. He has the power to transform your life. And I only share my story just to glorify Him and say, what a good God we have. But it's only half of the story is done, so we often forget the older son. So let's finish up. As we finish up today, let's talk about the older son. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. In Jewish culture, older boys are supposed to greet guests and welcome them. Where is this older son? So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fat calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. Now remember, this is in public. You never refuse to go in and join the party or say no to food because it disgraces the family publicly, especially the father. The father has the right to become angry, to stay inside of the party and publicly humiliate his older son. That's perfectly acceptable in Eastern culture. But what does he do? The father went out, pleaded with him. See, for the second time that day, the father seeks to restore his sons. So it's not just the younger son that has the issue, it's the older son, too, that has the issue. He answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. Never disobeyed your orders. Can you almost hear the anger, the insult, the disrespect? Yet you never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. And when this son of yours, he's not my brother anymore, who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you killed a fat calf for him. My son, the father said, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So the story ends. So Jesus leaves everybody wondering, okay, what did the older son do? Why does Jesus stop right here? I'll tell you why. Remember, there's two groups of people listening. There's Pharisees and there's sinners. What is Jesus, Jason Georges says, what is Jesus communicating to the Pharisees and teachers of the law? They are the reason he does not finish the story. They need to finish it. Jesus is saying, I'm offering love and forgiveness to the tax collectors and sinners, the younger son. Will the older son come in and join the welcome home party? Jesus ends the story because how the listeners respond to Jesus' invitation is the conclusion of the story. Jesus is the master teacher. He has so much wisdom when he teaches. You see how deep a simple story goes? This is why we need to read the text. Because there's so much in it. What else is Jesus saying to the Pharisees, the older brother? The older son had kept his father's commands, but he did it out of duty instead of love, and basically he was a hypocrite. And I wonder how many of us, including myself, have gone to church out of duty instead of out of love. We've served out of guilt instead of compassion. Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, you also are welcome at my Father's table where there is forgiveness. See, we forget that Jesus loved the Pharisees too. And regardless of who you are in the story, the younger son, whichever you are, we all have the same issue. We feel unworthy, don't we? We feel unworthy of God's love. So let me prove it to you. All right, you ready? How many here believe God loves them? Okay? Keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. Don't go anywhere. How many here believe God likes them? Okay, every hand should stay up. I caught one church with this. They all put their hands down and said, gotcha. Because why is it we believe that God, put your hands down, God loves us, but he doesn't like us? Did you know that God is so passionately nuts about you that if he had a refrigerator, your picture would be on it? And this God who created universes and stars and created every animal, created everything you see around you, is a God who knows your name. Knows each person by name here. You can start over here and go all around this room and you can say, I know what you're struggling with. I know what you're going through right now. I know exactly what's going on in each one of your lives. And you know what? I deeply love you and I deeply care about you because you are my child. You are my child. And you say, if people really knew what kind of person I am, well, guess what? God knows you. Warts and all. He knows the side of you that nobody else sees. The cranky side, the nasty side. We can all put on a face here. We can all walk in here and say hallelujah. And, oh, glad to meet you, brother. How you doing, brother? Oh, everything's great. Everything's going great. How's your week going? That was great. And in reality, life stinks. Why can't we be transparent with one another? Why can't we say, you know what? I'm having a really bad week, and I'm struggling, and I need you to pray for me. Why is it AA does all the work the church should be doing? I love AA, guys. I go to AA meetings. I used to go to them on occasion in Mobile. I love it. Total transparency. I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Chris. Well, it's been 14 hours since I last went on. I love that. Total transparency. Why do we have to put a mask on here? Because God already knows your heart and knows what's going on. Why can't you just say, I'm having a bad week? Let's be real with each other. When God sees you, so how does he feel? Do you remember, guys, talking to the men here now, remember when you saw your child for the first time? Remember how you felt? I took like 400 pictures of Sarah. Teresa was like, okay, I think that's enough pictures. I just couldn't keep my eyes off her. And if you and I do that with our kids, why do we think that God would be any different? And he's perfect love. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. That's yada, know you. That's husband-wife intimacy, know. That's how well God knows you. So don't put on a mask. Don't be fake. If you're having a bad day with God, say, God, I'm having a bad day and I don't feel like talking to you right now. That's why I love Psalms, because David's like, I'm really angry with you right now. I wish you'd break the teeth of the wicked. That's extremely honest. And I think that's why he was a man after God's own heart, because he was transparent. So if you want a meaty relationship with God, be real. And stop the fake prayers. Guide, guard, and direct us. No. I'm having a real problem today, Lord, and it starts with you. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in Korea, I went through about a year there where I was really angry with God. God is so patient with us. You're not supposed to be angry with God. He didn't say that. I think God likes people that are real and honest with him. At least that's what Job tells me in Psalms. So as we close today, how are we going to obey this in our lives? Well, I think we need to ask God if we have any wrong views of him, wrong understandings, because he is a good, good Father. Spend time with him because you want to, not because you have to. Do you kick your children out whenever they make a mistake in your home? No. You're upset with them, right? But you don't say get out. Why do we think God kicks us out of the house whenever we make a mistake? You think your mistakes surprise God? Oh, Chris, I'm so surprised at you. You saw it. And you know what? I sinned. And yes, I deserve punishment. All he wants me to do is say, I'm sorry. What's wrong? We've got to get a right view of God in our lives, because it influences everything we do. And I'm not saying I got it all down and I'm perfect, because I don't. I know this much. But I began to realize that's the struggle of my life. Why I struggle so much is because of that very issue. And the other thing to think about is, do rejected people feel loved around us? Jesus attracted prostitutes, tax collectors, sinners. They felt very comfortable around him. They feel comfortable around people. Think about it. When you think of God, what image? I hope it's the first one. That's the image I want you to have. Let's pray. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is join the endless chorus, Lord, today. Because we want to say you're worthy. You are so good to us. Why do you love us so much? We are so unlovable. We are so uncaring, and we are so forgetful of you, and we are rebellious. And yet you patiently draw us back to you. We thank you today for this beautiful story of the good Father, the Father with open arms, the compassionate Father. I pray for all of us in this room, may the Holy Spirit do a major makeover on all of us and how we see you, Lord, because I know a lot of us have really bad misunderstandings of you. We see you in very ungodly ways. Satan has planted many bad seeds. We ask that you replace them with your truth. We ask that you help us understand you the way you truly are in your word. We thank you today for your mercy and your grace for which we stand. We thank you that you are forgiving and compassionate. You welcome us when we turn back to you. We ask today that you draw us near to your heart. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. One last thing. Today, if you have come here and you are not a follower of Christ, I want to plead with you that if you understand this story, that is the exact response God will give you if you come to Him. He will forgive you, wash you clean, adopt you as His child. You can begin your walk with God today. If you believe with all your heart that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, if you say, yes, in my heart I've sinned against God and I've hurt Him, and I'm ready to trust in the finished work of the cross, and I'm ready to change my ways and go God's way in my life. And I'm ready to confess my faith before people today. Baptism is where you begin that walk with God, where you are immersed and forgiven, where you come in contact symbolically with the blood of Christ, and where you are raised to a new life. Maybe today you just say, hey, you know what? I'm tired of wearing a mask. I'm tired of being fake. And I just want to be real. And I want to ask the elders to pray over me today because I need to get more serious about my walk with God. We got to stop playing with God, guys. Eternity's at our doorstep. We may die today. You realize that? We need to get our lives right with God now. Not to show off or anything, but to say, you know what? I need you, Lord, in my life. Whatever your need is, won't you come as we stand and sing.